Give it up for the president of Mad Solar, Karina Manashil.
Oh, this is so cool. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Wow, this is wicked cool. Thank you all for being here. It means the world to us. I have to start by saying the biggest thank you to Revenge of for creating this extraordinary real-life experience for Moonman. We have to thank Tristan Eaton for this cover that you guys are seeing, exclusive just to you, for being here. He's extraordinarily talented. We have another artist in the room who is involved in everything, Chase Conley. You might know for his Miles Morales redesign that makes it into everything that we see with Spider-Man, who's responsible for this iconic look of Moonman. But there's a few gentlemen I have to welcome to the stage, which I imagine you guys are itching for. The first is the co-creator and co-writer of Moonman. He's also the co-creator of Radiant Black. He's a creative director of Black Market Narrative and the entire Massiverse at Image Comics, Kyle Higgins. And then this is my favorite introduction. Get ready for the hyphenates. We have musician, artist, producer, actor, director, writer, creator of Moonman, co-writer alongside Kyle Higgins of the entire issue, my partner, my dearest friend, Scott Mescudi. Alrighty, so you guys are gonna get a little bit of storytelling from me. I've known Scott for a number of years, so you might enjoy some of this. But one of the first questions everybody is really itching to know is where Scott's love of comic books began. And I'll tell you that before you get into that, there's some really sweet stories that Scott has told me about when he was a kid growing up, loving comics and that leading him to draw and doing illustration. And he is a kid in school.
Hold on, don't give away my answer.
Oh gosh, is this part of your answer?
Let me.
Oh my God!
Let me go ahead.
I thought you were going to talk about a different part
It's
of
not
this.
so much I'm gonna say.
I'll give it. I'll let him be the storyteller.
But you were on the road to basically. That's why I was like, I stopped you.
Yeah, go for it.
But you know, when I was younger, I used to draw all the time. So cartoons, comic books, anything visual just got me really quickly when I was younger. And I wanted to be a cartoonist up until I was 14, 15, and then I had this idea to be a rapper. But you know, animation, cartoons, these were things that I was super passionate about. And it's something that never changed throughout my life. You know, as I grew older, I still had an interest in comics. I still had an interest in animation. And, you know, reading comics as a kid, you know, was great for me because what I would do sometimes, because I used to airbrush and I would take pictures from the comic and draw them and make them bigger and have these big blown up pieces that I would do. And, you know, there was one comic that I was really obsessed with that I used to do drawings of all the time, and that was Scud the Disposable Assassin. And that was really the first comic that I read that I felt like, oh, this is a unique story. This is new and different, and I haven't seen anything like this before. And, of course, I read, like, you know, the Superman, the Spider-Man, the Batman, and all those comics, but there was also, like, Scud and the Sonic the Hedgehog comics and the Ninja Turtle comics and things like that, you know?
Yeah. I think you have to tell them, too, when you would draw Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yeah.
I love this story.
So, like, when I was in, like, first grade, I would draw Ninja Turtles, and basically I would sell the artwork to my friends, to my class. So, like, you know, one side, if I had, you know, one image of a turtle, I would sell it for 50 cents, and if I had a front and back picture, it would be $1.
Did you get royalties on all of it?
No, I should. But no, it was like my little side hustle in the first grade, you know. But it also let me know that, like, you know, my work was good. You know, people actually wanted it, and people were checking for me to do artwork of turtles all the time. So yeah, I started off a little business in the first grade, big bossy.
Comes in hot. So similarly to how Scott from music loves comics, Kyle, you love music. Tell us about that.
Yeah, music's been a huge part of my life for pretty much my entire life. We talked about this in New York for the first time, but like I grew up playing the trumpet. I played until I was about 25, classical and jazz, and it's something that not only it sounds trite to say like there's a soundtrack kind of going all the time for me, but a soundtrack to your life, right? But like there is. It's sorry.
It's appropriate.
But the thing, I actually think there's quite a bit of crossover between music and comics, especially the way that you approach storytelling in the medium. Everything from, like, I very much pride myself, and I see it in Scott too, in how I structure for page turn reveals, like how you're controlling the flow and the storytelling across a preset amount of time. And that coupled with, I just have a real true love and appreciation for singular artists. And I think we can all agree that there is really not anyone more singular than Kid Cudi. So the idea of working together to build out, a vision that he's had for many years and, bring it to life. And, Chase Conley, as we were talking about, is here tonight, who designed the suit on the main character, and Marco Locati and Hassan Atsmani El-Wahu and Michael Basudal, our editor, and Igor Monti on colors. Like, the team is something that similar to honestly putting a band together, like, or working on a film. Like, you're picking these different colorations or flavors that are going to work. I guess cooking is another example. Like, that's my favorite part. So getting to do stuff like this and collaborate with artists that I really admire is, that's kind of like, that's the best of all worlds.
I know that feeling very well. Scott, with that in mind, how did Moonman come about for you? How did this all start?
Well, as a lot of my fans know, like, this Moonman thing has been kind of like my theme from the very beginning. And I think it wasn't until my fourth album, Indicud, where I really started to conjure up a world where this Moonman character existed. And I don't know how many people got a chance to see that Cut Life tour that year where I wore the spacesuit. But that was kind of like my first kind of like entry into making him a real thing, And on the suit, there was like little details like that gave you a little bit of the story, And it was kind of like the album Satellite Flight was the name of like the journey that I was trying to take the character on, and he was a part of this like satellite academy, this like ragtag group of like kind of soldiers that like work and like have a base on the moon. And I had this whole backstory, so that's how I came up with the whole theme of the spacesuit. But like on that album, if I had like that intro, like the rise of Scott Mescudi, the resurrection of Scott Mescudi, and then the all those intros and stuff. That was me kind of scoring this movie, in my mind, this story of like who this Moonman character was. And I didn't have. It was very vague. I didn't have any details, but I was just like, I want to take the listener on this ride where this character I've been talking about for the past 5 years is, a real thing, and I would say, a couple years ago, it kind of got to this point where I was like, man, this is something that I want to actually bring to life, and I thought telling it in comic form would be the best way, and I thought there was no other better person. When we were reaching out and we were thinking about people to work with, you mentioned Kyle, and I just did my research, and I was like, yes, he's the guy. It was like a no-brainer. And as you guys know about all of his other work, he's the fucking guy. But, it just kind of started coming together. It's just one of these things where I was like, wow, I really finally have an opportunity to make something that I've spent 15 years of my career building, making it a real thing and bringing him to life,
It's so true. I thought one of the really interesting things about your approach to this too, and that really led to the connection with Kyle, was that you wanted to authentically approach comics from the headspace of it being embraced by the world. So there was so much authenticity and specificity to how Moonman came together, and this reception, I have to say, is like it's. it is so thrilling for us to see that it truly is embraced, and so much of that is thanks to Kyle and the entire team that you've built and brought in with us. So it's wildly appreciated that this moment is even.
Let's give a hand to
here.
Kyle, y'all, man. Come on, y'all.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask for what did you say? He's the guy. If you could just put that on like a pull quote, that'll be
Perfect.
He's the guy.
He's the guy by Scott.
well. But I just want to piggyback
No,
on
please.
that for a second, because that approach and that coming from a place of authenticity, like it was very clear from the very first conversations that you love comics, like you know this space and this world from a reading standpoint, and like wanting to come in, like this is LA, like we all have met people who are trying to sell you their screenplay, probably earlier today, right? Like the idea of going and approaching something just to do it, you know, is not, how do I want to say this? Like there are some approaches to doing comics that I am not a fan of personally. And then there are approaches to doing comics that are about the purity of the storytelling and the art and the connection you're trying to create with readers. And that's the stuff that I love. And taking full advantage of the medium and doing things in the medium that you can only do, right? And like the fact we're all here tonight, like how many artists like Scott do you know would come and do a comic book store signing? Like this was Scott, like Scott wanted to do a launch for this and everything, right?
Yeah.
Like we want to do it right, and like I'm very happy and grateful to see everyone come out tonight and to give this a shot. And like, by the way, I think we can say this for the first time here. We've said it online, but you all are holding what is now a sold out issue #1 of Moonman.
With that in mind, I think everybody with the sold out issue #1 deserves a little bit of story. Can you guys tell us a little bit about Moonman?
Sure, yeah. So the book, it takes place right now, or maybe like 2 minutes in the future, but it follows a character named Ramon Townsend, who is an astronaut for a private commercial company called Janus Aerospace. And Janus Aerospace is a division of Janus, which is like our Amazon crossed with like SpaceX, like mega corporation that essentially owns everything and drives wages down and has their hand in every industry. This doesn't sound familiar to anyone, does it? But Ramon is someone who, before working for Janus, flew some of the commercial flights for NASA and the shuttle program before that was shut down. And that all comes from a dream that he's had since a very, very young age, which is that he wants to make it to the moon. And before issue 1 launches, there's been an attempt. And this mission to the moon, now the reasons behind it may leave a little bit to be desired, i.e. the billionaire's son wants to be the first person to TikTok on the moon in 50 years. But for Ramon, it's a vehicle to get there and to live out this pure dream. And something horrible, I shouldn't say horrible yet, but something goes wrong. And there's 7 minutes missing from all of the instruments, all of the video, the live streams, everything. And in those 7 minutes, as you're going to see in issue 1, even though the astronauts and Ramon say that everything's okay now that they've made it back home, something very significant has happened. And Ramon is starting to change into something that the world has not seen before. But this is all set in the backdrop of, as I talk about, this company that, you know, is owning and controlling everything that it can, because in this day and age, you want to talk about antagonists and threats to the world and democracy and fiction even. You know, you look at what NASA represented in the early days and the idea of exploration and discovery for the sake of exploring and discovering and for the human condition. And that's all gone now. And so the idea of owning and controlling purely to own and control, it's something that I think we all fight and bump up against, you know, increasingly in this day and age. It's also why, look, it's not a coincidence that we are doing this book at Image Comics, which is not only the best deal in comics, it's the best deal in entertainment. It's truly creator-owned. The creators truly own what they make at this publisher. And so the things that we're exploring here, I think, are both very topical right now, but then also put through this, like, you know, this sci-fi superhero lens as we're exploring what it means to be, in some ways, a celebrity for what has happened in these events in the year 2023.
I also want to add one thing that was important for me is to make a character that was very grounded. Moonman is for the people. He is a superhero for the people. He lives a normal life. He tries to just stay out of people's business and keep his nose to the ground and just, just do things right. And as you'll see when you keep reading, you'll see that he is about the people, and you see the conflict that him and Micah kind of go to, because it's like right now there's the conflict at the end of the episode, at the end of the issue. But you're going to see, kind of that turn and kind of how that conflict between the two brothers comes to come to a head, and you could talk a little bit more about that too.
How many people here have read Miracle Man or know what Miracle Man is, right? One of Alan Moore's seminal works from the 80s. Miracle Man, what made Miracle Man so incredible and kind of revolutionary within superheroes was the idea of introducing power into the world and these powered beings that ultimately become, I'm not saying we're doing this part, but they ultimately become almost godlike. But it's looking at what introducing power into the world means and the repercussions and the consequences of what that introduction then turns into. So we've been talking behind the scenes. The swing for us is that, like, looking at the responsibility to have power in the world in the 2020s now, and what Ramon's feelings about that are versus what his younger brother from a slightly different generation, Micah's feelings about that are, and how they're going to push and pull on each other, and where Ramon's going to land with regards to the responsibility that having power in 2023 might come with. Like, that's the stuff that I think it very much is from the very get-go, as you talk about building a character for the people. Like, I know you've talked about wanting to explore this self-discovery. Yeah. And this is, we can get into it a little bit more as we go, but we're just getting started here.
I'll say, too, one of the things that I really loved in this invention of this character was leaning into the cultural component of him. So something really interesting you see, which feels very new but is so traditionally Scott, is that you have this look on Moonman, and Scott goes, well, why can't he change his T-shirt? If this is a vigilante look he pulled out of his closet, who's to say he would never change any of his clothes? So there's the idea that fashion and style, music, that there's so much embedded into it that really makes Ramon feel like somebody that we would know in this moment. I'm curious, Scott, just to know a little bit from you, why was that component of Ramon so important to you?
Well, I just wanted to make a character that was, because like when you think of astronauts, you don't think cool. I always thought astronauts were cool, but I'm a nerd. But and I was just introduced to space at such a young age. Like, I went to the planetarium in like the first grade, and it was a wrap. But like, I don't know. Hold on. I'm sorry. Let me get your question was.
It's like the components of culture and style in this character. You describe him too as a maverick, a hotshot. Like, he's fresh to death. Like, how?
Yeah,
why
like
was that?
he's got style. He's cool. I imagine like he's this hotshot maverick kind of Top Gun pilot, and he's, late 30s, early 40s, kind of like still the hot shot, and like, he's just at the top of his game, but he's doing a job that most people in their 60s are doing, or late 50s or something. You know what I mean? So he's like, and then also there's not that many blacks, not many us in that world. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to take the opportunity to just make, a really cool, grounded superhero that was for the people, that was for every man, every woman, every kid, that really was about saving the world, for humanity and just doing right and, saving the world,
And I think it's gonna be a journey getting there for him too.
Yeah, I mean, he's not. This is kind of like, this is not the story of like somebody getting powers and being like, oh shit, I'm gonna be a superhero now.
Exactly.
Like, this is not. He is like very much going to be battling with this concept, And I think, well, I don't want to give it away. Obviously, we know he's going to become the Moonman, but we don't want to give away how he gets there. But there is, this suit that you see is just his vigilante suit. He gets an actual suit, and that's going to be exciting. I can't wait for y'all to see that. But
that's the first time you said that.
Yeah. This is a little piece of news for you.
It may have been designed already and looks sick as hell.
Yeah, it's super sick.
I'll say too, one of the things I really love about this, and considering all of these, mechanisms of being current, culture speaking, is that there's also this nostalgia of the American dream that Moonman has, which is this dream of going on the moon. That is all this man wants to achieve. That's all he's doing in this situation with Giannis, is that he really has this aspiration and wants to live it out, which is wildly relatable for the world that we live in right now. And then you take that character and you ground him in Cleveland, where you're from. Why was Cleveland such an important component?
Well, you never hear stories from Cleveland. Never. Never ever. So I thought that was look, we're in the business to make something new and groundbreaking, or make a new comic that people haven't seen before, right? And I was like, the best first step is just to set this in a place where nobody's ever seen, and I thought Cleveland was perfect. Yeah. That's my hometown. I know I'm from Cleveland, and every chance I get, I like to rap, and I like to incorporate my city into my work and in my music, my films. So it was only right, man. I feel like it was perfect. I was like, this is exactly what we need to just make sure that we're putting ourselves in a different space than anything else that's out right now,
Absolutely. And then Kyle, you already alluded to all of the creative team that's involved in putting Moonman together. Can you tell us a little bit what it was like working with all of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the kind of like my favorite parts of what I predominantly do these days when I'm not writing Moonman is I run Black Market Narrative, which is my little creative collective and studio. And I call it a creative collective for a reason. It truly is that. One of my favorite things to do for my entire career, really. Like I pride myself on helping put books together for creators I believe in, artists that I see. I do so many conventions and have for so many years that it's like I have this. First of all, I love sequential artwork, sequential storytelling artwork. So like I have this kind of like Rolodex that I'm constantly adding to of people that I find or artists. Or there's some amazing editors here actually right now. I can see Alex Antone, who was at DC for a long time. He's at Skybound now. Alex, we literally nerd out over new artist samples. Like, did you see this guy? And we'll trade stuff for each other. And so putting together the team for Moonman was very exciting, but there's a lot riding on it, and finding the right style and tone, and knowing how much Scott loved Scud and Rob, the cartoonist on that. I wanted something that felt a little funky. We're gonna go sci-fi, but I didn't want super slick. And so honestly, Marco Cudi, this is like one of his first books, but he is this just like dynamo artist out of Italy whose brother also is in the music industry. He's the drummer in apparently the most famous band in Italy that has the greatest band name I've ever heard. It's Nuclear Tactical Penguins. So Marco knew Scott's work immediately, knew what would go into something like this, hit the ground running. Even before we got Marco, like Chase was one of the first people that we brought on. We wanted to nail the suit designs like from the get-go. Chase had done the big Miles Morales 10th anniversary redesign. That pink and black Miles suit you see in the game, that's Mr. Chase Conley's. Igor Monti works with me on Radiant Black and Deep Cuts, this big 60-year story that goes through the history of jazz, and he colors each issue in a different style. So it was like I was showing that to Scott and just like think about these two. Normally Marco colors himself, but sometimes it's kind of like having a different producer on an album. Like you get a different coloration or flavor when you put a different colorist on, line art that you may have seen, a certain way in the past. So, and then Hassan Otsmani Oahu's one of the best letterers, maybe the best in the industry, multiple Eisner Award winning. And Michael Basudel, who is our ringleader, editor and designer. All the design work you see here, so this logo, so this is all Michael, Moonman here. Michael's in Australia. It means he can't yell at me not to say nice things about him on stage right now. But it really is, you're putting a band together. You're putting a team to go on an adventure, and you're hopefully, adding complementary skills. But also, you're trying to add people where you go, I don't quite know what they're going to do here, and that's really exciting, And for someone like Marco, it very much has changed how we write the scripts. And I think like for anyone who hasn't read issue 1 yet, or anyone who has, you'll see, I think it reads. I would argue rather cinematic. Like it does.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that I noticed when I first, got the book in my hand and I was going through it. It feels like all the years I've been reading comics, it was just a different experience. And I don't think it was because it was my own. I think it was truly because we went out to create something different and something that felt that you could feel, something that popped off the page. You are engaged as soon as you read the first couple pages. Like you're locked in. And it's so crazy because it doesn't feel like a comic. It's very cinematic. It's very it's almost like you're reading a script in some ways. In the dialogue, the way we really worked at that to make it natural and make it feel real, and the relationship between Ramon and Micah, that was really important. It was just like we really wanted to make this feel new and fresh and different than anything you've ever read before,
And the other thing on the creative team that's really, really exciting for all of us as big visual people is like we have a murderer's row of cover artists. So you see this amazing piece here tonight from Tristan Eaton, who's joined us. I don't know if he's out there still. But we also have on issue 1 alone, I mean, we've got Marco Licati on the main cover. That piece that's on the wall right there, that's a Christian Ward cover. We have Rod Reese. We have Erica D'Urso. We have Sanford Green. And then, honestly, my favorite is, Matt Taylor, big Mondo poster artist. He did a gorgeous 1 in 50 cover for us. But my favorite is someone that Scott has a long kind of history and legacy with, which is Bill Sienkiewicz. Bill Sienkiewicz, one of our industry's kind of legends and gods, did a gorgeous Moonman variant cover for us for issue number 1, but it comes full circle because he also did the album artwork for
Man on the Moon 1.
So
it's kind of crazy because you can kind of tell like the tone is still the same. It was really crazy to just see this cover and just like go like, holy shit, it has like Man on the Moon in the day vibes. So yeah.
I have to say, is this working?
Here, use this one. I gotta grab something real quick.
Okay. And is it? Oh, we're good. Okay. So there's one thing that I was really curious to hear from you, and it involves a little bit of a story. But I will say one of the most profound experiences I've had with Scott, and you've heard this before, was when we were creating Intergalactic. There was a moment when we were sitting in Netflix in the theater, and it was the first time we were seeing the completed project on the screen, and you cried at the end of it, and you had said, it's insane because in music, you have producers, but it's a more singular experience. I have to have the concept, create the idea, write the words, get to the end of it, and there is something that's very personal and linear about that process. But with Intergalactic, I had this idea up here, and it touches 350 hands all over the world, and ends up exactly that thing that I envision, if not even bigger. And it was one of my pride moments getting to be with you. You described a little bit the feeling of having that comic book in your hands, but was it similar to that moment with Intergalactic actually getting to sift through these covers with their variants?
Yeah, like I had them all kind of spread out on my counter in my kitchen. And I was just kind of looking at them like, holy shit, this is real. This is so real. And then I like, oh yes, this is real, yes. So I sat down with the comic, and of course, I know the comic, but it was really just like, I just want to have the experience like a regular fan and just read it cover to cover. And it was just so like, I was like, I don't know if I'm biased or whatever, but I think this is fire, and I think, I love it. I think people are gonna love it, but it's, it's the same feeling I'm getting with fashion, making something tangible that people can like hold, you know what I mean, and keep in their lives, and it's different than music. It's a different gift. It's a different thing that it gives me. Seeing the responses, the reactions to Man on the Moon. I mean to Moonman today on Twitter. I was on Twitter just looking at kids talking about picking it up early and talking about what they think about it and seeing some reviews, and it was an overwhelming amount of positive reactions. Like everybody was picking up what we were putting down. They got it. Like we were right on target, and we knew what people wanted to see and wanted to hear, and it's just so validating for me, because just like Intergalactic, that was me taking a big swing, that was a big project, and it could have been a disaster, but it wasn't. And this comic book too, for me, is another big swing, it could have been a disaster, but we got Kyle, So
I did not internalize. I did not internalize that pressure.
I did. I was thinking that's all the pressure. That's all the time. I'm
popping antacid like they're Tic Tacs, buddy. Like, come on.
But no, like I mean, it's just so. It feels so good to make art, to put something out in the world and see it be well received. Something that you work hard on and put your soul into, and you just want people to like it, and you see that people do. So you feel like you were on the right track. You didn't just have this wacky idea and it was just some crazy idea for the sake of an idea. Like it was really like the idea of ideas. Like that's what I felt like with Intergalactic. The way that kind of rocked the world and getting the Emmy and all these things, like it's just so powerful,
Do you think, or do you find, we haven't talked about this yet, so I'm putting you on the spot,
Okay.
but I've asked writers in the past, like, is there something, they're coming back to comics, for example, like, is there something you missed that you can, and they just would describe to me as like, yes, you can only do this sort of thing in a comic. As a storyteller, do you find, like, you've worked in music for so many years now, like, I know there's probably tools in your toolbox that you've honed and refined, and you kind of know what you want to do or how to shape things or how to find it. Like, do you find working in fashion, working in comics, like that fear is probably too strong a word, but like, do you have a different creative process at all as you're trying to build or find your way through what makes a story or characters versus a song?
Yes, because in those other two things you mentioned they're new things. When you do something for years, 15 years, you start getting in your head because you're so high up and you could fall and it could be over, In the beginning, you just 5 feet off the ground. If you fail, it's like, fall, get back up, like, that was early. I'm still learning, So there's so much pressure for the music to excel at a certain level every time. And, with fashion, with the comic, these are new things. These are new ventures. I'm learning a lot of it. I'm learning. I've never made a comic before. I'm just now learning to design clothes. Every collection, I'm learning something new. So I'm still a student. Of this. Where music, I'm a master. Like I'm a wizard in music. Like there's no song I can't make. But with fashion, it's a little bit like I have to like really think and like how I was when I made my first album, where Man on the Moon in a Day took like 2 years to make, like I was really like putting a lot into it and thinking about it a lot, and you just have to get to this place where I'm at with music, like I don't overthink things like I used to. Now it's like I make something and I'm like, I ask my friends a lot what they think, but 9 times out of 10 I know if something's right or not, but with fashion and the comic or anything else new I do, there's still that uncertainty of is it good enough? Does it suck? Like, oh my God, this sucks. Like everything I do like with outside of music, like the fashion or whatever, like I think like everything sucks until like we're going a couple days into the design session, and then I'm like, oh, actually this is cool. This is kind of fresh. That's why you gotta stick with it, Scott. Don't give up. But it requires a lot of like fine tuning and a lot of thought. you know. So that's kind of like the difference. And I feel like that's a great place to be. It's nice to be in the early stages of something of a new craft. You know, that's almost the most fun part. Like, you know, not saying being Kid Cudi 15 years in is not fun for me when I create music, but it was just a different type of experience when you first came in and you were learning these things, you know. And in 2009, an album like Man on the Moon, The End of the Day was like, there was nothing that sounded like that. So it was an exciting time to just be at the forefront of something new. And I feel like that's where we're at with Moonman. You know, we're on the forefront of presenting a new story, giving people a new experience in this medium, in the comic book world, you know?
And there are some things that we're going to be doing coming up from a format standpoint that are, you know, I don't want to overpromise, but definitely pushing the boundaries on how comics are delivered, how storytelling across mediums are delivered. I mean, for anyone who has followed my Radiant Black work or No One or any of the Massiver stuff, you probably know, like, we love taking advantage of outside the box storytelling techniques, things that are inherent narratively to the concept, but are designed in a way where it's not just it's not just limited to the confines of the page. Immersion is a really big thing for me in this day and age. You were talking about the American dream before, you know, and for me, what's so funny is, like, I like to talk about. I'm so cynical in so many ways, I feel like, but all of this for me is about trying to create a little bit more magic in the world, like in the way that I don't get the same level of fulfillment anymore of the things that I grew up a fan of, but the hope is, can you make things that make other people feel the way that the stuff you loved made you feel, you know? And so we've got some stuff coming up. I mean, we launched today, so moonmancomic.com, for example. If you go there, we have a nice little partnership with Omnibus for digital readers. It's like you can get the book right there digitally, right? You can find your local comic store right there as well, like an amazing store like Revenge of here out in Eagle Rock. Books don't do that usually, and I'm biting my tongue here because there's other stuff obviously, but like I don't want to, you know, save some stuff for the people for when it actually drops. But similar.
Oh,
yeah.
well, you can say this. There's a new song that's coming out Friday. Yeah, it's a song I did with Denzel Curry. It's called Black Ops. It's really dope. Just really dope hip hop record. Hope you love it.
I will say there's something really beautiful listening to the
Can
two
you say
of you.
that it's tied to the book? Did you say it's tied to the book?
Yes, it is. So every couple months or whenever I have a song or so, I'll have it released with a comic. So eventually, when all the issues are out and you give the whole story, you'll pretty much have a full album's worth of songs. You know. So that's my plan. Like, we'll see what happens. But I got y'all. The first song coming out this Friday. Don't worry.
Can we say what the album art is called? What it says on the album art?
You go for it. Kid
Cudi presents the soundtrack of Moonman.
That's right. Yeah.
So moonmancomic.com. Make sure you check that out. We'll be putting up all sorts of. We might even do something like a video from tonight. Stuff really trying to celebrate comic outside of the pages itself. I don't remember what your question was.
No.
Sorry.
I was going to compliment the moment because it was really interesting listening to both sides of what you're doing. And Scott, when you're talking about entering these new mediums, what I think is so interesting about the mediums that you're choosing is that you're a true lover of what you're becoming a student in. Yeah. The comics is fulfilling Kid Scott. Yeah. The fashion is fulfilling this man that you grew up into and what you aspire to project. Like there's something, and then Kyle on the reverse, comics is your background, but there's this collaboration on music in terms of thinking of comics sonically that's really married the two of you and allowed you to really experience something different together. Yeah. I will say is a really kind of sweet story about the two of you because you're starting to hear the little brotherhood and the cuteness that comes out between them, and I've like very much gotten to enjoy that on.
We definitely weren't singing the theme song to the Ninja Turtles last night.
Like fully.
At Scott's birthday.
Surrounded by Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
That definitely happened. That definitely happened. And I like looked for Kyle. Like, I was like, look at this. I was like,
This man had a turtle van at his birthday.
But one of the sweetest conversations was when Scott was describing the powers he wanted from Moonman. He's like, I want him to be able to float and then fly. I want him to be bulletproof. I want him to be super strong. And it really felt like the kid imagining all that could be possible for this character. And then alongside Kyle, as they're figuring out the lore of him and Moonman, they linked it to gravity. And it's like, oh, well, all of these different iterations of what this man can perform can all be linked to him controlling the gravity around him. So you're going to see so much of those experiences that we've had behind the scenes as you're reading the book that really combine two different dreamers approaching something from different ends of it.
And then even that going, okay, well, how do we iterate differently from there? Like, what do we do with that that we haven't seen before? So it's like, for example, equal and opposite reaction, right? So as Ramon is learning these abilities now, there's kickback as he's using them, and how his abilities affect the world. As I said before, when you're introducing power into the world, how does it change things? In this instance, it literally is. And so that's a thing where it not only does it lend itself, you can see on the wall right there, like that's a big kickback moment. And as we get going here and Ramon learns, we're going to be learning about these abilities, where they come from, what they're a part of, if anything, and what responsibility Ramon may or may not find himself willing to embrace as he looks to try to make the world a better place.
also, we should talk about how Moonman gets around. You know, with the parkour on the buildings.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
kind of his vibe.
Well, that's the cool thing. Like, he manipulates the gravity, but it's like a near field kind of manipulation. So it's really just around him, except for these kind of kickback moments, right? So that means, especially if you're talking about a character with style, if you can't fly yet, but you can maneuver yourself elegantly.
You'll figure it out.
Parkour is not exactly a thing that looks awful. I will say that from an approach. And issue 2 is going to have a big sequence that. Well, we got to talk about that actually later too. There's another note on it, but. Yes, there's a lot of parkour running.
Yes. And actually, if you guys have put the issue 2 cover online, so you have seen it.
Yeah.
But that's actually a shot from him doing like his traveling through the city from building to building, and you see his reflection on the building. It's really a dope shot. I mean, I remember when you sent it to me, I was like, dude, this is so epic for a second episode.
And then, playing with format, there's obviously, we got to do the issue where with the gravity powers out of control, the whole book is upside down. So you have to read it right to left, the whole.
Yeah.
So that's not a puzzle I just created for myself or anything. But
Yeah.
We're going to the manga reading. We're going to flip it all over. Well, you guys have been incredible, and I truly feel like you've given away countless Easter eggs. But is there anything else you want to leave this wonderful group with before we're done?
We're just getting started. Moonman is going to be around till I'm 80 years old. That's the plan. So we're in it for the long run, you know what I mean? And we're going to keep putting out cool stories. We're going to keep trying to give you something new, give you new experiences. And more new music coming soon. I'll have more music for you guys. And cool shit incoming, yeah. Thank you.
yeah, I would say, like, again, moonmancomic.com is the best spot for, like, it's a good hub for all the stuff we're doing. We have a newsletter for Black Market Narrative. If you go to blackmarket.la, you can sign up for it there. You can find it through any of my social or anything like that. That's a good spot for, news, announcements, like all those sorts of fun things. I'm trying to think Easter eggs.
You gave away quite a few. We
I
worked
did.
them in.
You got one?
This is my we have to figure out when we're gonna intro this, but I'm not gonna say it fully. But there's another character in the universe that we're working on. So don't worry.
Well, I guess the way to really tease that is,
Yeah, you go for it. You tease it.
look, the idea that we have one comic from Kid Cudi is really freaking cool. But wouldn't it be cooler if there were more than one?
So we cooking. Just know we cooking. Let him cook.
I'm glad I asked the question.
The last
Great
thing I would
answer.
leave it with is, again, thank you everyone for coming. I'll turn it over to you guys. But for those of you who don't know comics, stores like this is the lifeblood of the industry. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell anyone you think might dig this, or anyone you know who liked superheroes or saw a Marvel movie once but then said that's just too much, or it feels hashed out over and over. Like, we're trying to do something different here, but we're also trying to bring a brand new superhero, an independent superhero, to the world in the 2020s in a tough market. And we want to continue to celebrate with you and do this every single month and show you how cool not only comics but superhero comics can be. So please tell your friends so we can keep doing that.
Damn right.
Thank you guys so much
Thanks, guys.
for being here.